Cherished memories, treasured traditions, safety and security for those you love. Life isn't about what we take with us, it's about what we leave behind. So how will you leave them with what they need, when they need it the most? Life insurance from WAEPA can help you keep giving even after you're gone. Civilian federal employees have entrusted their family's financial future to WAEPA for more than 80 years. By safeguarding their tomorrow, you can fully appreciate today.
Hello and welcome to GovExecTV's 100 Days In, How Trump is Reshaping Government, coming to you live from our Watergate studios in Washington, D.C. I'm Eric Katz, Senior Correspondent for Government Executive. Thanks for joining me for today's special episode. The first 100 days of a presidential term are a critical benchmark. For the administration, it's a chance to hit the ground running with the early accomplishments. For the rest of us, it's a chance to get a sense of the administration's priorities and direction. Today marks the 100th day of President Trump's second term, and his return to the White House is making massive waves across Washington. From policy shifts to federal workforce impacts and budget battles to agency overhauls, the changes are significant and in many ways only just beginning. We'll review what's happened so far and what's to come down the line, and what federal employees, contractors, and agencies need to know to stay prepared. We have a packed program including expert analysis, on-the-ground perspective, and practical insights for navigating this new chapter. So let's get started. A note right off the top. We invited officials from the Office of Management and Budget and the Office of Personnel Management to join today's program. They couldn't be here, but OPM's Acting Director, Chuck Ezel, provided the following statement. I'm proud of all OPM has achieved in just 100 days. We continue our unwavering commitment to design a modern, accountable federal workforce that serves the American people. We're kicking off the program with an in-depth conversation with a former federal employee to help us frame the moment that we're in. Dr. Kartik Sheth is a former Associate Chief Scientist at NASA. Kartik, thanks so much for being here, and let's dive right in. Tell me about your role at NASA, how you ended up there, and why you decided that working for the agency was a good fit for you.
Yeah, thanks very much for the invitation. I'm really glad to be here. I came to NASA about 10 years ago after a career in astrophysics. In fact, I helped build one of the largest telescopes in Chile, the Atacama Large Millimeter Array, and was a tenured astronomer at the National Radio Astronomy Observatory. But ever since I was a kid, growing up in India, and the first shows that came to India were Star Trek and Different Strokes. And every Sunday I would run around the building trying to find somebody who would let me watch TV because I always wanted to go into space. So NASA was the reason why we came to America, and I was so fortunate to be able to come to NASA about 10 years ago. Because it's an agency that really is probably one of the most inspirational brand names in the world. It motivates people to do incredible things, to do the impossible, and I wanted to be part of that. I came to NASA in 2015, worked initially in the Science Mission Directorate, which is one of the 5 directorates at NASA, as a program manager, program director, and oversaw all of the infrared astrophysics portfolios. And then for about 2 years, really worked in the Office of Science and Technology Policy, Office of Management and Budget at the White House, and most recently came back really at the top of NASA for the last year and a few months. I was appointed as the Associate Chief Scientist. In that role, which is in the Office of Chief Scientist, we were in the administrator suite, so we are at the very top of NASA trying to provide agency-wide advice, strategy, and policy in an unbiased, data-driven way so that the agency can make decisions on how to prioritize different decisions that we are making, how to move forward when it comes to science and technology. And really, we were kind of the brain trust, the think tank for the administrator.
Okay, so that's your background. You obviously played an important role at NASA, but you, like thousands of federal employees now, received a reduction in force or RIF notice. Um, a lot of viewers out there are nervous right now. They're scared about, they're wondering how this process plays out. So can you tell us about what that was like for you? How did you find out? And what happened after that?
Sure. It was actually very unexpected and quite sudden. Because we are in the administrator suite at the top of NASA, we were effectively waiting for the new administrator to come in because we are kind of the brain trust for the agency. Uh, my office was the Office of the Chief Scientist, and another office, the Office of Technology, Policy, and Strategy, were the two offices that received RIF notices on March 10th. They delivered it to us with a meeting. I actually happened to be on a plane coming back from trying to go see the launch of the SphereX mission, one of my last missions in California. So I tried to dial in from the plane, but they told me, just come back and we will have another meeting with you. But for both offices, and to be honest, it only involved maybe 11 or 15 civil servants. So these two offices weren't really that big in an agency of 18,000 people. They had individual meetings with each of our offices and told us that we were being laid off. We were only given a 30-day notice instead of the usual 60 days. And they told us that at the end of the meeting, we would get the official notice in writing, which included the RIF notice along with a lot of documentation on sort of the next steps, if you had severance, what the severance might be, if you were eligible for retirement, what that would be. So everybody had a separate package that they were given. So that was basically the process.
Okay, and then from that point, you were pretty much in that 30 days on leave, not working.
They said if we wanted to go on administrative leave, we could. I did not choose to do that. I had students in town that week, so I was taking them around NASA to show them around how awesome NASA was. So it was a little bit of a real life learning experience for them. Yes. I'm showing them how incredible NASA is. I took them to Goddard Space Flight Center, showed them the labs, and yet, I was being riffed. For me personally, I had a lot of time off award from, the performance, high performance ratings over the last 10 years. And I was told that that time off award would not be paid out per OPM regulations.
Okay.
That I was welcome to use it up at that time. So that's what I did, but I could have gone on administrative leave as well.
Sure. And so you had students in town. Just goes to show how unexpected this was. So like you mentioned, your whole office is gone. Another office next year is gone. Your decades of experience has now exited from federal service. What does that mean for the agency? What is being left behind and what work's not getting done now that you and your colleagues are not there?
Yeah, as I mentioned, the OTPS and OCS offices were the brain trust for the administrator. Unlike the mission directorates or the centers, where really the money goes, to execute the work, we were really trying to provide independent, data-driven analysis for the choices that the agency was making or reviewing things that we had done so that we could be more efficient, so that we could execute to achieve our mission goals. That independent, nonpartisan sort of lens is now gone. You could argue that other people within the centers or the mission directorates could possibly do that work. But, they actually are not, they have money coming in, they have programs that they're doing. So it always is difficult for them to speak independently with not having a quote unquote dog in the fight. You could argue that, maybe contractors or the private sector could do this analysis, and that's possible. You could hire a McKinsey or a Deloitte to do the work that we were doing. However, most of us who were in these offices had 10 or 20 years of experience and deep relationships across the agency. Many of us had actually worked in other parts of the agency at centers. So we were bringing a rich knowledge that is now gone from the agency that was meant to advise the administrator. So what I don't know is how the incoming, yet to be confirmed administrator, Jared Isaacman, will replace the functions that we were doing. In our office, for example, we had many statutory things that we were supposed to do. For example, we were in charge of scientific integrity or research integrity for the agency. My personal role, for example, I had just put out the public access plan, which is a agency-wide implementation of how we share the data from the federally funded research that we're doing so that it's available to everybody. We were in the process of implementing that across the agency. And it's really difficult to see how the agency will get through all of these different steps that we were already doing. And it's not just the chief scientist, the chief technologist, the chief economist, they were also let go. And I think these are essential functions. I don't understand exactly how these roles will be replaced.
Right. And, it seems in a lot of cases that there's sort of a shoot first, ask questions later approach. And if there is sort of a turn to a contractor, it begs the question, what sort of efficiency is that even driving? But we are seeing cuts like this all across the government.
Yeah.
And there have been varying reasons for this. Do you have any sense of why this happened specifically? And it was pretty targeted, as you mentioned, at least for now. Why did this happen? Why did it happen now at NASA?
No, completely unclear. And, I think that is perhaps the most frustrating part for most of us. As I said, it's only really if you take out the people who were not civil servants and if you take out the people who had already submitted resignations, the total number of people impacted was only at most 15 people. Now, when NASA put out the notice, they said these two offices are being eliminated along with the DEI branch of the ODO office, but they had already been on administrative leave since January 21st. In total, NASA has said that they were eliminating 23 positions, but it's not a lot of people in a 18,000 person agency per se. They did that 4 days before the ARRP, the agency restructuring and reorganization plan, was due. And what was officially said in a letter to the agency, to the entire agency, was that we are leaning in to future reductions in force or reorganization. What's confusing now is that since that happened, sort of all the talk of reductions in force has gone away. And there's a lot of talk of reorganization, but nobody else from the agency has been let go. And so I think there's just a lot of uncertainty on what's going to happen in the future and real lack of clarity on why these two offices were eliminated. You could have imagined they could have taken the 11 or 15 of us and people tried to hire us back into other offices because there was a need. And they were told they could not hire anybody because we were under a hiring freeze. We were also told we could not move laterally into other detail positions that were also open across the agency. So yeah, it's very unclear why we were let go.
And as you think through that uncertainty, and you mentioned that there's work that you were doing that's statutorily required. You were there to sort of provide this objective voice into the science that was being evaluated, and as policy decisions were being made. But as you look forward to some of this restructuring and potentially maybe if they put more reductions back on the board, what are your biggest concerns about this agency that you grew up sort of idolizing, what the future holds for it?
Yeah, the agency is at an amazing inflection point, and it's a time when I think these two offices were probably quite sorely needed. With SpaceX and the real consistency of launches that SpaceX has provided, there is now cheaper and easier access to space than ever before. We see a huge new set of private sector companies coming on board to utilize space for all kinds of applications on the Earth, as well as carry out some of the tasks that only NASA used to do in the future. So this is a really important time when we have to figure out how to manage that transition. And these two offices were really important in trying to take a look across the federal government, across all of the commercial stakeholders, and across NASA to try to provide that independent advice to the administrator. So that is going to be the challenge for NASA, is how do we navigate this going into the future? I have no doubt I think one of the great things about NASA is if you give us a mission, I still say yes, us, if you give NASA a mission, um, NASA employees are incredible. They will carry it out. I have never been in a place where people are as committed, as mission driven, as helpful. I mean, I can give you so many examples where people bent over backwards to help solve a problem or help individual people out. So I love the agency. I think, I don't know what will happen as we go through this inflection point to a new era of commercial usage of space. So I think just a lot of uncertainty right now. I think there are interesting challenges ahead for NASA, especially as the rest of the world starts to get involved in utilizing space. So yeah, I think that's kind of where we are.
Yeah, and there's no shortage of headline-making programs and projects that NASA is currently involved in, and we're just about out of time. Do you have any sense of what's next for you?
Oh, for me personally, no. It is unusual to not have a job in 40 years. I've been working every day since I came to America. And I've had an incredible career at NASA. I couldn't be more thankful to the agency for giving me the chance to work on really complex projects, really take me away from being an academic and really studying galaxy evolution to learning how to manage incredibly complex space programs, to look at policy making and strategy across the agency, looking at the entire federal government. So I'm not sure what the next step is. I'm sure my NASA experience will serve me well. So I'm optimistic that something will turn up.
Well, we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
And we really appreciate you taking the time to share your insights with us and offer your perspective. So thank you for
Thanks
being
very
here.
much. Thanks, Ed.
Plenty more to come on GovExecTV's 100 Days In live special. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after a brief commercial break.
FITARA, FITARA, triple word score, 30 points.
Are acronyms allowed?
Sure, laser, radar, FITARA, they're common parlance.
Okay. FITARAs, triple word score, 33 points.
That's not a thing.
Learn the rules, meet the players, win the business of government with GovExecTV. Find out more at govexec.com/feature/TV.
Are you sure?
Challenge.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to 100 Days In, How Trump is Reshaping Government, our first live episode of GovExecTV. I'm George Jackson. Whether it's a hiring freeze, a major agency restructure, or a policy shift, federal employees often find themselves on the front lines of change. If you're on the hunt for stability in uncertain times, look no further than Shane Canfield. He is CEO of WEPA. Shane, always a pleasure.
Thank you. Great to see you again, George.
So let's kick off this discussion. A lot of fast shifts in the federal government right now, a lot of uncertainty. Talk a bit about the role WEPA plays, where you step into that landscape.
There have been periods of uncertainty in the federal workforce over the years. We at WEPA, especially now, we've been telling our story anew. We are 82 years old. We were founded in 1943. We have been around the federal community and part of the federal community as a nonprofit benefits trust, which is different than commercial insurance, exclusively for federal employees. And we also partner with New York Life. So they're another institution, 180 years old. So what we're talking to people about now is reminding them that we've been here for the long haul, that no matter what happens in the federal workforce, we're going to be there for you. And, the related piece of that is our mission is to serve federal employees and help them with their financial futures. And we do that not by advocacy or policy setting. The way we do that is through the providing of an exceptional life insurance benefit. That's our main role.
You almost anticipated where I wanted to go next, Shane, with that 80-plus year legacy. As far as presidential transitions go, this ain't your first rodeo. Can you lend some historical context for folks? How have those experiences, the experiences of a number of federal transitions, impacted the way that you serve members today?
That is an excellent question. And in the recent past, we've been trying to expand how people can access the program. And for example, we now include former federal employees, and that's relatively recent. So if somebody leaves federal service, and you can't take FEGLI with you, that's the federal life insurance program. And it's not a knock against FEGLI. Those plans are not designed to go beyond an employer. But with ours, you can take the plan with you. So that helps. It gives people comfort to know that they don't have to go to market to have this basic financial protection of life insurance. They don't have to go out again. If you've got WAPA, it can go with you. The other additional thing with former feds was because we're a benefits trust, there are a lot of rules around how we can operate. In the 501c9 world, it's very tightly regulated. And we felt like former federal employees should also have the ability to join the plan and not lose that eligibility if they leave federal service. So the short of that is that if somebody leaves federal service for whatever reason, they retire, they move on, they get caught up in unfortunate DOJ activities, they leave federal service, they can still join this group plan for federal employees. So that was a big deal.
What about those folks, and you used this phrase before we went on the air, in between feds, like people who are, dealing with shifting roles, people who are waiting on more clarity based off of restructured offices? What do those in-between folks have access to?
In our case, both the product, again, if you're a current federal employee or leaving or have left, you can access it. That's one piece. But I will tell you that in times of uncertainty, and that could be around your job, but also the financial markets are all over the place. So it's this double whammy of rocky markets that affect 401ks, people's personal savings, as well as uncertainty with employment. Those two things combined, that's a perfect storm for a drop in consumer confidence, especially in the federal community right now. And so what tends to happen is people stop making purchases. They're not buying cars, they're not buying houses, unless they have to. They're not buying washing machines. And life insurance changing, even though we cost less than FEGLI, it's still a change. People don't want to go through that process. So we spend a lot of time telling people that in the midst of all of this, don't forget about your personal finances. Don't let the uncertainty mean that you don't focus on that. And so one of the ways we do that, in addition to the tremendous value of the life insurance program, unique only for feds, is we have a partnership with Ernst & Young. And if you're a member, whether you buy the insurance or not, if you're a member of WAPA, you can have access to dedicated financial planners, and they can help you with everything from an individual question, say, what do I do about college education for my kids? Or they can do a full-blown financial plan. That is available. It's a service we provide. It's available to everybody at no cost. George, it's a big deal. It's something that corporate America has been doing for years. I brought the concept from corporate America to this nonprofit association that we are. And I encourage everybody to get out ahead of it, even if you don't leave federal service. It's a great time to feel comfortable, more comfortable with your financial situation by having a third-party expert take a look. The last thing I'll say about that is we designed this program on purpose with Ernst & Young. Ernst & Young doesn't sell anything. So this is not a commission-based approach where you get financial planning and then the planner has the financial solution with products they want to sell. There's nothing wrong with that inherently, but we didn't want that element into this process. So we kept it out. So this is what the market would call an equivalent of fee-based financial planning. And it doesn't cost anything. And I'm a big proponent, not only because I know it works, but I use it myself, and it's wonderful.
I want to focus for a moment, Shane, on life insurance specifically. I mean, a lot of people, myself included, if I'm being honest, consider it just, a just-in-case sort of option. Is that accurate? Is that mindset right? Do people need to sort of adjust it when they think about life insurance?
It's difficult to think about life insurance because, George, what you're doing is thinking about your own mortality. And that's can be uncomfortable.
Sure.
And even if you want to do it, it tends to be something that people can put off because it's a one-time thing, and if it happens, you're not here. But I think a better way to look at it is your complete financial picture. And if you're not here and you have financial obligations, you have a loved one, is it a good idea to leave them without paid for assets like a house? The other piece that people don't think about is lost income. So there's two components when you figure out how much life insurance you need is what are my debts? What are my bills? But also, say it's a 40 or 50-year-old, how many working years left do they have? That money goes away too. So the one thing we like to tell people is you don't want to add financial stress into a bad situation if you pass away and your family is going through hard emotional times. You don't want to layer financial trouble on top of that. So we encourage people to look at this on a regular basis. George, our busiest season every year is November and December.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is that even though it's not open enrollment for feds with life insurance, it is open season for health insurance. And so what people tend to do, we encourage this, is take a look at your health insurance plan, but figure out if it's the right plan for you, if it's the right amount of money you want to spend. But at that same time, open your thinking to looking at your overall financial picture. One of those things is life insurance. It is absolutely critical, and it doesn't cost much money either, George. I mean, our average premium is $700 a year, and we're a lot less expensive than Fegley. So it's just an uncomfortable topic, but you have to get over that, right?
As you mentioned, WAPE have been around since 1943, trusted, mission-based organization, nonprofit, as you mentioned. Talk about how that DNA, the DNA of the company itself, the organization itself, how it fuels the leadership of your organization, yourself included, if you want.
That's a brilliant question. I've been in the life and health insurance business for my entire career on the for-profit and nonprofit side. Nonprofits are different. We are, as you rightly said, we are mission-based. We're not profit-based. It doesn't mean that we don't have to make money. So we have to be efficient with our resources and how we run the business. But at the same time, we have a long-term view, 30 plus years. We're here making commitments to pay life insurance claims to people that may not pass away for 40 years. So they may get to a point when they're 80 and they don't even need coverage anymore, right? So that long-term view, along with doing what's best for the member, is different than commercial insurance. We're not reporting to Wall Street on quarterly earnings. We don't have that dynamic. There's nothing wrong with commercial insurance, but I will tell you, to your point, it makes a huge difference in how we view what we do because it's through the lens of service. So the federal employees are serving the nation, and we are serving them. And that's real. It's not a tagline. So everything we do is built around how can we serve feds better? And one direct piece of evidence of that is every year that we can, which is most 26 of the last 27 years, we have a premium refund. So if there are additional premiums that are paid into the plan that we don't need for operations or paying claims, we return that money. It's not guaranteed, but what commercial company would do something like that? Nobody.
And serving me up with some great information, WEPA CEO Shane Canfield, sir. Always a pleasure.
Thanks so much, George. Great to be here.
I'm George Jackson. Stick around for more great conversations on 100 Days In, how Trump is reshaping government, our first live episode of GovExecTV, right after this.
Civilian federal service follows countless paths, each road unique, each journey distinct. WEPA has covered them all since 1943, from the demands of the job and accomplishments at work, to the joys of the family and milestones at home, from inside the office to beyond the Beltway. Group term life insurance from WEPA has the coverage and benefits to protect you and your loved ones, wherever Fed life leads. WEPA, for Feds, by Feds.
Welcome back to GovExecTV's 100 Days In, How Trump is Reshaping Government, coming to you live from our Watergate studios in Washington, D.C. I'm Eric Katz, Senior Correspondent for Government Executive. Thanks for joining me for today's special episode. Now that we've got input from OPM and on-the-ground perspective from a former federal employee and insight on protections feds can take to make sure they are covered in this time of change, let's go to some expert insight from a group of leaders tracking what the Trump administration means for the people who keep government running, the federal workforce. I'm going to start with you, Max. We've seen a lot of disruption over the last 100 days at federal agencies and their workforces, and this happened in 100 days, pretty short period of time. Just in a statement OPM sent over to us, they highlighted that they've ended telework, they've rebooted Schedule F, they've overseen the federal hiring freeze, they've instituted this quasi buyout program, and of course they've helped fire and lay off tens of thousands of employees at this point, and I could go on and on with what we've seen. But from sort of a historical perspective, because you've been around this stuff for a while, how unprecedented is both the pace and the scope of what we're seeing here?
Well, that's just to be clear at the front end that it's unusual to have anybody be proud of being responsible for the plagues, which is essentially what we're seeing right now. It's unprecedented. There's nothing like it. Rob and I were talking about this right beforehand. There's been no president during their entire term that has created so much destruction in terms of the public infrastructure that we have. And I have been searching for the last 100 days what the right metaphor is, and nothing gets better than saying we're watching arson of a public institution, and there is no justification for it, which is both deeply troubling from the harm that is being caused, but also there's an opportunity cost because we know that our government can be done better, and there was an opportunity here to do it. What's happening, though, is the exact opposite of what should be happening. The harm is profound in terms of the impact it will have for Americans and the services they receive, in terms of our safety as a country, in terms of our economic well-being, and in terms of the public servants who are there serving the people who are being treated in the most profoundly dehumanizing way. You had Russ Vought saying he wanted to traumatize the federal workforce at the outset. That is what they are doing. There's zero justification for it, and they should be held to account because they are destroying something that is vital and important to our future. And I hope we get to the point where we can rebuild better, but the harm is going to be profound and felt for a long time to come.
And Rob, I want to start with you with an area of your expertise. You used to lead Office of Personnel Management. We heard a little bit from them on what they see as their big accomplishments here. They've been so front and center as an agency, which for me, and I've been covering this stuff for a while, is unusual. I'm not used to seeing OPM on the front page of the New York Times on a weekly basis, which seems to be what's happening here. Does this strike you as a change from OPM? And if so, what does that mean for their role in managing the federal government?
I think this is at the heart of the problems that the administration is facing, and they are facing numerous problems with their anti-worker agenda. My organization, Democracy Forward, has won many cases against the administration just for this thing. And the reason is because this is not OPM pulling the strings. This is DOGE using OPM to implement the DOGE agenda. OPM is a relatively small agency, around 3,000 workers total. Most of them process retirement benefits and oversee the federal employee health insurance program. The idea that a few hundred OPM employees who are dedicated to HR policy and oversight, that they would have any idea what's going on for 2.2 million workers, who 85% of whom are outside the DMV, it just doesn't make any sense. And that's why you see people getting fired and then rehired. That's why you see this slash and burn, because the people that are making the decisions have no idea about how to deliver government services.
And John, I'll bring you in here. When these things are unfolding that Max and Rob have talked about, there's real human impact to that, and you help manage that to some extent with your organization. What are you hearing from members? Like, what are their biggest concerns? What are they reaching out to you about? And as you sort of sort through that and you do the advocacy work that you all do, what do you focus on?
That's a great question. I think there's a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty, and a lot of anger depending on the circumstances. So you have retirees fearful about cuts to their benefits that are potentially going through Congress. They're also concerned about what they see happening in the federal government, that they had a long experience serving, and they know and have personal experience that informs how it should work, and seeing it work this way is not what they like. For federal employees, whether they're facing termination through, the stories are countless. Somebody who was a probationary employee because they got a promotion or a probationary status, people dealing with the uncertainties of the validity of these deferred resignation offers, these large-scale reductions in force, the shuttering of entire agencies despite what Congress has directed the executive branch to do. There's just a lot of feedback, and we're just trying to help our members navigate how to deal with the decisions arising from these things, and also give them an ability to take some action. I think there's a lot of searching for guidance on how to respond, and I think a lot of people are dealing with that because a lot of these actions are so unprecedented, and they want to see the legal actions. What can they do, and can you talk to your member of Congress? So I think it's trying to develop a set of responses that they can take as well, and be part of the process, because ultimately this is a democracy, voters matter, and we can work through that democratic process to essentially, to at some point bring some of this, curb some of these decision makings. And I know we have a president, for a 4-year term, but there are other levers in our system to pull and to push to try to push back here.
So, Max, that's a good summary of how individuals and groups of employees are sort of facing this and trying to respond to this. But there's perhaps an even larger impact to what we're seeing, and you touched on it a little bit. But talk to me about how the federal government and agencies are impacted operationally, and there's widespread rifts and firings, there's deregulatory actions, there's concentrations of power. How will agencies' ability to carry out their missions be impacted by this?
Yeah, I mean, it's crushing is the answer. I'm just sitting here thinking, like, we could all be it's so unprecedented what's occurring right now. We literally could be tearing our hair out as bad as it's actually been, and it's impossible to even keep track on a real-time basis or all the harms that are taking place. And I think that the more fundamental question, John reached one of the pieces, which is what can people do about it? They need answers, how to activate. And I think part of that's going to be directed at the question you're asking, which is what's the impact on the broader public? And bluntly, we've had a public that hasn't really understood its own government, a public that has lost trust in government. We've been doing research on this for 4 or 5 years now. And basically, when you say federal government, most Americans think bickering politicians in Washington. They don't think at all about the civil servants that are front and center to the harm that is being done today. And we had started an effort to try to reintroduce the public to their own civil servants. The stories of people we found is the best way to actually do that. And now I think Americans are going to see, why their government matters through loss, because there are going to be all kinds of things that they have assumed would be there that will no longer be there. And it's going to hit every community. It is already hitting every community, from veterans to farmers to business people. And every community, Rob used the figure 85% of feds being outside of D.C. I mean, this is a national, it's a global issue of consequence. I think partly what we have to be aware of, though, is that there'll be a counter narrative that is presented that will not be true, and that that's somebody else's fault, that actually the harm is not really there. And it's going to be really, really important that these stories are communicated effectively, not through the normal channels that we might think about through mainstream media, but through social media, through the entertainment world, through local media. I think this is going to be ultimately a battle over narrative in terms of what the end consequences are. You mentioned again, we do have processes. The legal system is holding up. Democracy Forward has done a tremendous job in terms of bringing lawsuits that they're winning. The courts are extraordinarily important, but they're not the whole game here. We need them and more, and we need every American, frankly, to stand up and to make a difference, both individually and collectively.
Right, and I think it's an interesting point that you raise about the counter narratives that could come out of this. And another part of the playbook that we've seen in the past that I'm interested to see if it plays out this way is you break something, then you say, look, it's not working, and then you say, look, we got to get rid of it, privatize it, something like that.
Right.
And that could be one of the next pieces to fall here. Rob, Max mentioned your work at Democracy Forward. Tell us a little bit about what you all are doing, and for you personally, how you decided that was a natural segue for you to go from what you're doing at OPM to your next act.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. So the civil service has really been my life's work. I started out as a union lawyer for the National Treasury Employees Union, and over the Obama and the Biden administrations, I've spent nearly 10 years at OPM. I know a lot of civil servants. I've worked with them across the government on all of the challenges that the country has faced during my time in government, and I have just the utmost respect for their professionalism, their commitment, their dedication, their drive to serve their country and help make their local communities better. So I had seen Project 2025. I had seen what the plans were for the federal workforce, and I knew that Democracy Forward was going to be on the front lines of fighting against those plans. And it was really important to me to be able to go and be a part of that fight and stand up for federal workers. And Max is exactly right. Like, I think we need to help the American people understand what federal workers are doing in these jobs and how it impacts their local communities, because I think that story has not been told well. And as individuals start to feel these impacts, I think we need to make sure they're understanding what the causes of it, because that's what kills federal employees more than anything. They're worried about their own careers, but when I talk to them, the first thing they say is, who's going to take care of these folks? Who's going to do this job that I do that's important to that community? What happens if nobody's here to do that? I wanted to be fighting for them.
I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with federal employees over the last few months who have been impacted by some of these changes, and it's striking. They say, I'll be fine, or maybe, or it might be a struggle, but what I'm really, and I think Kartik, who we just had on from NASA, has said the same thing. Like, what I'm worried about is the work that's not getting done, the constituencies that I was helping to take care of, and there's a concern that there's been some talk of doing more with less, but there's certainly just going to be less work that gets done. John, when you've laid out some of the problems or some of the issues that have been raised by your members, and there's still potentially more to come. You mentioned potential for like cuts to retirement benefits, and maybe you can elaborate on that. But what are you looking for next? Like it seems to me like the changes here have been rolled out sort of in phases. We saw probationary firings. We're seeing RIFs. There's some more shoes to drop here. What are you keeping an eye on, and what are your members concerned about?
Well, on the executive actions, we're very much concerned about the rollout of Schedule Policy Career, which used to be Schedule F, and what that does to the civil service, which has long been a professional workforce that has expertise, that is not based on whether you support the president in power or a political party. And that system has served us very well for a long time. And a lot of the reforms that we had in the 70s to bolster that system were in response to the Nixon administration and corruption then. So the threat is real of corruption and cronyism and politically favored decisions in the federal workforce. And OPM has put out a proposed rule on this. Certainly, we'll be commenting on that. We'll encourage our members to comment on that. I know Democracy Forward is working on that as well. So I think that'll be an incredibly important fight to come. I think there's the large-scale reductions in workforce that are happening and are continuing to happen, but changing the nature of the workforce, I think, is the next threat to focus on from the administration, and what that means for the operation of government, adherence to the rule of law. If you start having an administration that seems to have less deference to the rule of law than the past, and then they can easily fire people at will, even because they're trying to uphold the law and not do something illegal, that I think creates a pretty severe threat for our system of government entirely.
Robert, let me just quickly bring you in on this, because it does seem like this revamped Schedule F, Schedule Policy Career, is what will come next in terms of federal workforce management and changes. You were at OPM when the Biden administration sought to roll some of this back. It seems like the Trump administration is throwing out your regulations that for reasons that I can't quite put my finger on, or at least the legal rationale is what I mean by that. I understand what their policy agenda is. Talk to me about what you all were trying to do there, and what you see from what OPM has put forward since you left.
Yeah, so we looked at this issue and we assessed the state of the law, what Congress had provided. We looked back at 140 plus years of a nonpartisan civil service and how that evolved from the 1880s up through enactment of the Civil Service Reform Act in 1978 and beyond. And what we concluded from all of that is that the first Trump administration's Schedule F effort was contrary to those laws, contrary to that long history, and would have devastating impacts on the American people. So we put out a proposed regulation, and we got a whole lot of comments on it from the public. And more than 2/3 of those comments were supportive of the policy that we had adopted to protect career civil servants from politicization, to make sure that they at least are given notice and an opportunity to respond when the agency wants to take an action against them, to make sure that if somebody is being singled out because of their political perspective, that there was an avenue for them to say, hey, this isn't right. That's what our rule did. I think this rule is not based in law, this proposed rule from the Trump administration. I think it's based on some flawed assumption that the federal government is made up of a bunch of deep state people who think every day about how they can impede and thwart the Trump administration. And I just don't think that's right. I don't think that the person that goes to their Social Security office every day is thinking, how can I impede the Trump administration today? I think they're trying to process benefits for the American people. I think that the people that assign wildland firefighters when fires are raging in the West, I don't think they're thinking, how can I get one over on the Trump administration today? I think they're trying to determine where is the greatest need and how can I save the most people. That's what motivates federal workers, and that's why I think that this whole Schedule PC thing is so wrong.
Yeah, and seeing this through a journalist lens, it's I chuckle sometimes because if anything, the career civil servants that I interact with are if they're leaning one way to a fault, it's overly cautious and not wanting to rock the boat in any way. And so I'll just throw that out there, and also to note that. Another thing that we've covered, and we haven't even gotten to this, and we probably won't have time, but the career senior executives, there was a rule that the Trump administration put forward at the beginning of their administration to make their performance reviews reflect how well those employees implemented the policies of the administration, or something along those lines. It's part of how they're now evaluated. Max, you said something at the beginning that I want to come back to as we sort of wind down here, that there's certainly, our government is not functioning in a perfect 100%, everything is great all the time way. There's possibly room for improvements, but you would advise a different strategy for that. I know you could probably go on for a few hours, but we only have a few minutes. What would a better approach look like, and is there any hope that after we get past this 100 days period, and maybe if DOJ is taking a little bit of a step back, that the Trump administration might follow some of those processes?
So it's hard to predict the future. I mean, if it's anything related to what we've seen in the last 100 days, we're in deeper trouble over the course of the rest of this administration. And we've heard some reasons why that might be the case. I mean, fundamentally, I think the most important issue is this question of why do we have a government, for whose purpose, for whose benefit? And as Rob just said, for 140 years as a nation, we recognized that the benefit's to the public good, not to the individual who's elected at any given time. And this current administration has returned us to that 19th century spoils system notion that no, it's actually to the benefit of the person who got elected. And we're watching institutions being bulldozed that might get in the way of that personal private interest. Unless and until we address that very core issue, we are, on our way to, third world status, basically, and a world in which decision-making is done by incompetence and corruption, and we don't have what we need to meet the very real challenges of the world. I think fundamentally, when you think about reform, the first piece is that values point, it's for the public good, and then you need leaders who are actually chosen on the basis of capability and character. And again, we're not watching that either. We're seeing leaders chosen on the basis of loyalty, personal loyalty to an individual, and that is not the road to effective outcomes for our government and therefore for the American people. If we address that leadership issue, the world's our oyster. I believe we can rebuild. I believe there's a lot of talented people who are fundamentally driven by purpose and will want to come back. As you say, this is a topic for longer conversation. I don't think this is only a future issue. I think it's a now issue too. There's some changes we should be pursuing in the here and now to set up the better future.
John, your organization represents a lot of federal retirees. These are typically, or at least often, people who have spent their entire career, decades in government. As you think about the changes that are happening now, do you have concerns that people will say, I can't survive this for my whole career? or a young college graduate might say, I don't even want to get started in this. It's not a good option for me. Do you think that the next generation, or even to some extent the middle management, current generation of potential government leaders, or just won't pursue that option anymore?
I think that's absolutely a concern. Before this administration, there were already challenges for the federal government to recruit younger generation of employees, where there was about 7%, I believe, under 30, compared to a much larger number in the private sector. Just ask yourself, would you want to be trying to take a job in this administration right now? Do you think you would have job security? Do you think you could predict that your job will be there for a long period of time, or that it would be a situation where your employer is treating you with respect as opposed to indiscriminately and not based on the merit of your actions? I think it's going to take time to repair this. I think it will have, to bring people in, it's going to cost American taxpayers, because we'll probably have to pay people more to recruit them, given the circumstances, given the lack of security, given the potential that they are treated the way they have been treated in the last 100 days.
I have had conversations along those lines, and you mentioned that you before this administration, and it's something that GovExec has covered ad nauseum, really, is how did we recruit the next generation of talent, and a lot of those people were in their probationary periods because they were recently hired, and then have gone through getting hired and refired and all of that. Rob, I think I'll give you the last question here, because I know that you and Democracy Forward are on sort of the front lines and trying to push back on what the Trump administration is doing here. What do you see as the most effective way that you all have done that sort of pushback, and what do you see as the steps that you all are going to be taking, going forward? How do you stay prepared as an advocacy group when there's just seems to be so much constant change?
Yeah, so first and foremost, it starts with bringing litigation to vindicate the rights of federal workers, and Democracy Forward does this across the board. It's a big part of our emphasis right now is around the federal workforce, but anywhere that the rule of law is vulnerable, we're there to fight for that. But I also agree with what Max said, and it's really an honor to be here with Max and John and representing not only Democracy Forward, but the Civil Service Strong program that I lead at Democracy Forward, where we're working together. Like, we're each part of different organizations that have their own, missions and considerations and everything else. But I want federal workers to know that there's a large community of organizations that believe that all of the things that Max said about why a nonpartisan expert civil service is essential, and all the things that John has been saying. And so we got to keep doing that. All of these organizations that have paid attention to these issues for a long time have to work together to make sure that we're providing federal workers the resources that they need, that we are working through Capitol Hill so that members of Congress understand the impacts of what's going on and the story about what's happening. And that coalition needs to grow. We need other organizations that haven't historically focused on the importance of the federal government to understand that their interests are at stake too, that they need to pay attention about what's going on to the federal workforce, because it's going to be bad for the economy, bad for our national security, bad for the bottom line, bad for food safety and the health of America and everything else the federal government touches. Everybody needs to pay attention to this and understand that these bad effects come directly from the dismantling of the nonpartisan expert career civil service.
Well, perhaps that's a slight note of optimism for us to end on. John, Max, Rob, thank you so much for being here, offering your perspectives to us, and engaging in this conversation. I hope that we can continue the dialogue in the future. The first 100 days of President Trump's second term has ushered in significant shifts, as we've just discussed, and there's more ahead. I hope we provided you with some great insights and maybe a little clarity today. Keep up with all the latest workforce and other headlines impacting the business of government on govexec.com. I'm Eric Katz, Senior Correspondent for Government Executive. See you next time.